Hello, viewers at home. My name is Samuel Gegede, a lawyer and legal practitioner, to be precise. So, today we are going to be talking about the planning permit law of some states. For this presentation, we'll say of Lagos State. Let's be precise. So, a lot has been happening around the state lately, and some section of the society has been angry regarding demolition here and there and all the activities of government agencies around the state. Based on all that has been happening, we decided to have this chat regarding the planning permit law of Lagos State. We have the 2015 that was now amended is now 2019 planning permit law, and the ministry that is in charge is the Ministry of Physical Planning and Urban Development, and we refer to it as MPP and UD for short, while some persons refer to the ministry as Lands as the general common name given to the ministry. So, however, the ministry is actually the Ministry of Physical Planning and Urban Development of Lagos State. So, they are the ones that regulate physical structures in Lagos State when it involves land issues, constructions, and site work, name it, on and on, plumbing and the rest. So, but now we are going to focus on the structural aspect of the law that has to do with construction and then proper compliance with the laws. So we are going to try to touch the most important aspect of the planning permit law and how it affects real estate developers and landlords and then investors generally. So on this note, I will start by encouraging us viewers at home to try to subscribe to the Chairman TV, so that we can learn more, and then the next episode will get other facts that are very, very important to us regarding development of land and construction generally. So at this junction, I will delve into the law briefly.
Let's talk the law.
The planning permit law was created in order to regulate structural development of land and then buildings generally. And then when we are talking about planning permit law, we are simply saying that the law that regulates construction and then geographical location that has to do with specific buildings, structures. We have business area, we have residential areas, we have recreational areas, we have gardens, parks, and on in various locations across the state. So all the lands or the society at large in every state has been mapped, created, or designated for a specific purpose. We have residential areas, we have the industrial areas, we have the business areas, we have both mixed residential and business environment. So when, for instance, if you want to have your business, let's say you can't have a factory in an estate that is meant for residential purpose. You cannot have a nightclub in an estate that is meant for residential purpose. But I know most of us will be agitated now and say, but we have a social nightclub in this estate or social hotel in this estate. It's actually a violation of the law, and that's why at times we wake up and see that government agency will come and start demolishing hotels an hotels or club in an estate is due to violation of the planning permit law of the state. So on this note, planning permit law was created in order to regulate construction and then usage of land, and then the comfort of the citizens in the state. So we cannot have a structure that is just built without proper compliance with the law. Number one, for you to raise a block, start arranging block. In short, the moment you start your foundation, before you start your foundation, you need to have done all the compliance regarding structural development on your land. And when we talk about compliance, we are simply saying that the planning permit law that regulates construction and structural development. And for you to do that, you need to have your surveyor, you need to have your engineer, you need to have a soil. You have both construction engineer and also soil test engineer that will test the soil and be sure that the soil is fit for the purpose that you want to use the land for. And you are not doing this independent of the ministry. You are going to actually involve the ministry, because the ministry has to ensure that the testing is carried out in compliance with the provisions of the law, because the ministry has all the personnel that I just mentioned now, both the surveyor, engineer, building engineer or site engineer, you call them. Then you have the soil test experts that has to do with both topography of the place and also the texture of the soil, if the soil is suitable to carry the weight of the building that you want to erect on your land. So for you to start your development, you need to first comply with all the requirements of the law regarding development. What are these requirements? Number one, you need to have a land. The land, we are not, when we talk about land here under this planning permit law, the planning permit law is not concerned whether you are the true owner of the land or you are not the true owner of the land. That's not what the focus of the law is for. The law is simply about the structural development on the land. So it's not the fact that the ministry grants you planning permit certificate doesn't mean that your land is valid, and doesn't mean that somebody else, a third party, cannot challenge your ownership of the land, because the planning permit law has nothing to do with ownership of land. It's simply to regulate whatever is placed on the land as construction projects. So at this point, we list out the requirements step by step, what you have to do for you to get your planning permit approval. So we go on a step-by-step procedure for getting a planning permit in Lagos State, and by extent, I would say that planning permit law are similar but not exactly the same in most states, because some states permit some activity regarding development of land while others do not. So they are similar, especially the basic requirements. They are similar. All states have their planning permits law, and that's why they have a Ministry of Physical Planning and Urban Development in each state of the federation. And then we have the Building Code of Nigeria, which is like the umbrella for the whole Nigeria, though regulated by the federal government. So step by step to getting your planning permit. Number one, you need a land. And that land, you must have done your documentation regarding the land, because part of the requirement is you need to do this survey on the land, carry out the survey on the land, and have the survey map ready, the map itself. And then you need to do soil test for the land. But before you get to soil test, you first need to do all those ones that has to do with documentation. So for us to have a planning permit, we need to have a land, and that land has to be properly registered and that's documented. And for that to happen, that means you need your deed of assignment, you need your receipt of purchase, you need your survey plan, and then you need your designs. That's structural designs for the property that will be on the land, for the structure that will be on the land. And then we need assessment of all the engineering aspects of it. That all the things that will be placed on the land in order to determine the weight of what the structure that is going to be on the land. So all these documents will be submitted to the ministry with an application for assessment. So when all these documents are submitted to the ministry will assess and look at the designs of the structure that will be on the land, and from there they will now determine the cost of the charge, the cost or the charges that will be awarded against the person for the development on that land. So planning permit costs cannot be determined by just having a land and having your text structural drawings and all that. No, you have to present it to the ministry. The ministry will look at the number of flats or buildings or duplex that will be on the land. If it's a mini estate, whatever it is, they will look at it. Then they will look at the environment also. Is this environment going to be, is this meant to be a residential environment, or is it an industrial environment? Is it an environment, or is it both residential and an industrial environment, business environment? The ministry has to determine all this by the locations, because they already have the map of the whole state in the ministry. So they will determine what the area or locality has been designated for. So if your land is within a residential environment, you already know, you can presume that, okay, whatever you are going to have on your land is going to be residential. If your land is in an industrial environment, you can easily presume that, okay, this land, you can only have an industrial activity on the land, either warehouse, factory, product manufacturing, business, whatever it is that has to do with business activity can be on the land. So, and then you have recreational sites too. If that particular area has been designated a recreational site, you know that you can presume that anything you are going to have on your land that is there, we have to be recreational in nature. You cannot have a different purpose for your land or your structure in an environment that has not been designated for it. So, after presenting all these documents, inclusive of your tax clearance, inclusive of your identifications, details of the owners and developers, surveyors, engineers, site engineer, and both construction engineer, all the engineers, you need their details has to be submitted to the ministry and be properly documented. So the ministry will look at all this and be able to assess these factors that I've mentioned regarding the locality. Is it a residential? Is it an industrial environment? By the time, or is it both? Is it mixed residential and business environment? The ministry will determine all this. So from your structural drawings, the ministry will now determine. That's architect now is involved also. You have to submit the architectural drawings. That's what I meant by structural drawings. So the architect is involved, and when they are done looking at the structural drawings, they will be able to determine the cost of what you are the assessment of what you are paying. And when you make the payment, remember I said earlier that having your planning permit has nothing to do with ownership of the land, has nothing to do with whether the land is genuine or not. It's simply the planning permit, the structural development that you want to place on your land that the government or ministry is interested in. That's what they are to regulate. They don't delve into ownership. Ownership, you have to go to the either land bureau or you go to courts to determine ownership, title or ownership, whatever you want to call it. So back to what we are saying. So after assessment of fee and then pre-approval, because there is first approval, pre-approval of all that you have submitted before the final approval, which will now come with the planning permit. So government will now ask you to now submit to now formally apply for the planning permit based on all that you have submitted, and you now go and you'll be directed to make payment to the government account, that will designated account that will be given to you, and all that. When you are done with payment based on the assessment of what that will be given to you, you also need soil test engineer, because the soil engineer, they have to test the nature of structure that can be on the land also. They want to know if the land can actually carry the weight of the structure that will be on the land. Then they want to know the quality of cement that you are going to use. They will be checking it from one stage to the other. The first decking, the second decking, they will be checking it. You have to invite them. As you build, you invite them to check. When they are done certifying that, the next stage you invite them again. So at every stage, every point in time, you have to involve the construction engineer and the text, the cement texture and all the rest that you are using to do your construction. They have to be confirming that, they have to approve it, that yes, they are up to standard, they are up to the quality that is expected of such structure. So on and on till you complete your building. And before you even move into the building, you still need government approval. You still need the ministry's approval that okay, people can now move into the building, people can now dwell in the building. You cannot just finish your building and just move in like that. It's not allowed. You have to still get approval for you to move into the building. The ministry has to give approval. That's how it's supposed to be based on the law that government has created to regulate buildings and structural development generally.
They are demolishing everywhere. They are demolishing. Oh, Jesus. Jesus, I could not bring out my property. I could not bring out my documents. They are demolishing everywhere. See. They are demolishing everywhere. Oh, the whole building, the whole house, they are demolishing. Oh, Rossville, Atajawa Estate.
So, the reason for demolition of your building is due to the fact that, number one, government invited you to step forward and do the proper thing, and you fail to respond to government's invitation. Because for there to be building demolition, there are stages, there are a procedure. There is a procedure that must be followed, even by the state governor. A governor cannot just independently order demolition of any structure without following the due process. In the Ministry of Physical Planning and Urban Development, there is a process that must be followed. Same goes with all the states of the federation, including the federal government. Government cannot just order a building to be demolished without proper procedure being followed. So your building was demolished not because a government is fighting against you or government did not like you. No. Your building was demolished because you failed to do the needful. Number one, you did not process your planning permit approval. You did not get planning permit from government. That's number one. Number two, when you were invited to step forward to come and show proof of your planning permit, you did not step forward, or you failed to present it. Number three, government fine. It's possible that government issue fine against you for building without planning permit, and you fail to comply, because the proper thing government normally do when you build in let's say for instance an estate that is for residential purpose, and government did not know and you were done building, if government later discover that you actually build without planning permit, government is to fine you and you have to pay a certain amount, which is normally multiplied by the value of the property, the cost of the normal assessment that should have been awarded against for that purpose for you to get planning permit. Government will normally multiply the cost as fine against you, and you have to pay the fine. When you are done paying the fine, you now start the process of regularization. That's applying for planning permit properly as built, because you've already built the structure. Government will now grant you that leverage to now say, okay, now that you have finished building the structure, yes, the structure is in a residential environment, you are expected to now come forward and apply for planning permit after paying the fine. And this thing is not a right, but rather a procedure that government has created for people not to be affected badly when it comes to buildings that are already on the land before planning permit approval. Planning permit is meant to come before you even put the second block on top of the first one. Before you lay the second coat of blocks on the land, you must first get your planning permit before anything on the land. That's how it's supposed to be. But in a situation whereby you fail to actually do that, government will now step forward and say, no, since you have finished building, or since you have started building, we are going to give you so fine. You will now still do the proper thing. After paying the fine, you now do the proper thing, which is to now apply for planning permit and submit all the necessary documents that I earlier mentioned for you to get the planning permit approval. So the next thing, outside this, we have some individuals that have built their structure since 90 or 50 years ago, that as at then, the planning permit law has not come into existence. Some states have not even created the Ministry of Physical Planning and Urban Development. However, when you feel your structure has been in existence before the planning permit law was created, the proper thing to do, still in that law, the law has created a means for you to regularize. Step forward. If you know your building has been in existence for a very long time, even before the law, step forward and do what is called regularization. And regularization is what you now apply for. Government will assess everything that you have and give you the cost that you are going to pay based on the structure you have on the land. And that's the proper thing that government will do. Okay, so like as I said earlier, for more content like this, for you to be properly guided and not cry that your building has been demolished or that you government did not give you proper notice and all that, I want you to understand that you need information, and information is the main thing that will guide you. And for you to get the true information, you need to endeavor to subscribe to our channel, and I can bet you every week we have something interesting for you.